Because I'm the house, and the house always wins.
Uh-huh.
You know, like the legal system, I mean, marriage, 56% failure rate, right? I mean, that's just if you consider success as not getting divorced. But if 56% of marriages end in divorce, and then another 10 or 20 is just be miserable forever because we don't want to give up half our shit, you know?
Well, the stuff that you do is so important, and I think that's the takeaway that I got when watching your first interview on Soft White, is a lot of people are signing up for an agreement. It's a serious business agreement. They've never read the fine print. They don't know what the contract is like. On some level, they're not sure what they're signing up for, and they're making an emotional decision. And I think that can get people into some difficult situations a little further down the road.
The key thing on today's, definition of marriage is that it's recognized by law. So it's really just a civil union. And that's why I'm saying we need to normalize divorce. If you understand that marriage in the most functional sense is a civil union, then you realize you really need to normalize divorce. And the main reason you may have seen in the opening there is it's, sadly, the divorce rate on the first marriage is 56%. So the majority of people that, enter into this contract, this civil union, the majority of these people are going to end up going through the divorce. And the problem is, if we don't discuss the divorce and normalize the discussion, normalize the idea, normalize the sad fact that the majority of people that get married are going to go through a divorce. When we normalize that, then people can start getting prepared. And by preparing for that divorce, they can put themselves in a better position to never have to go through it. That's the idea here. We're really operating with a fundamental breakdown of terms, that we aren't looking at this with equality. We're saying marriage has all these different ideals impressed upon it, but then the legal status of it and the legal parameters of it are way different than what we're operating under with the fantasies of our own mind. We blend some really, really scary things together with marriage. We blend our emotional and psychological aspect of who we are as people, which none of us know. We don't understand it. We don't understand it at all. We don't really even understand our consciousness. We definitely don't understand our emotions. And even if we start to understand our emotions, they change. So it's never something you can really get your thumb on and be like, okay, I got it. Got control of my emotions finally. Now I know I'm ready to enter into a civil union with somebody, because it's going to be a very low probability of it ever going through divorce. You're never going to do it. And I'm not promoting to do that. I'm saying that we're getting so caught up in something that we have just like no control over, right? Yet we go and enter into a civil union that requires lawyers, legal fees, the court. I mean, it's going to get nuts. Then you go buy a house together, and the worst part is you have kids together. So you've essentially conjoined yourself to somebody eternally here, really eternally, because you're creating new souls. And you have a zero-sum game in the way that you cannot beat the game. You can't just acquire enough skill to give yourself an assurance that you're going to do well at this every single time. Which many other things in life you can do that. Even if you make mistakes on it, whether it's business, whether it's sports, whether it's games, if that's your thing, or if you're just getting good at, mowing the lawn out front. You do it enough times and you get the right components in and you practice and you build your skill level up, you can have the best lawn in the neighborhood. Never fail at that, because you learned how to do it properly. When it comes to marriage, never going to happen that way, ever. Yet we put all the highest risk factors into it, right? So we know what our definition is of marriage in today's society. Now let's say what God has to say about it, because that's really the most important thing. Whether you're a Christian or not, here's what you ought to know. A civil union is not marriage, right? We just talked about the definition here is the state of being united as spouses in a consensual and contractual relationship recognized by law. They give that a definition of marriage. That is not what God is talking about. God defines marriage. God is the one that gave us marriage, right? And whether you're, again, Christian or not, all the ideals that you put in your head of like, we need to be with this person forever, we're going to have children with this individual, we're going to live together, we're going to have sex together, all those things, that has nothing to do with the civil union. You see what I mean? All those things that you have as ideals, that was created and instituted by God, the triune God. Now, again, for the Christians, you're going to love everything I'm going to say when it comes to grounding the redefinition of marriage. If you're a non-Christian, don't need to tune out. You really don't need to tune out, because we're not making this about a belief system of whether you believe that, the God of the Bible is who you need to put your faith in order to know where you're going to go after you turn your consciousness off. All you need to know is that where marriage came from is not from a fairy tale or a movie or something like that. And to simplify things, what we're going to explain, because this is where I'm going to get all my information from anyways, you look to the Bible. It's revealed knowledge, right? And when it comes to the Bible, again, I'm really reaching out to the people that's not a Christian, right? And doesn't care about God. Even if, just to give you an idea, okay, what the Bible actually is a reliable collection of historical documents, all coming together, written over a 1,500-year span, right? And during this time, God reveals his character. Most people would call it the law, but it's not so much that. What it more is his statutes, who he is as a person. Now, and you may not be Christian, but you might like the idea that God is love, right? Oh, God is love. Love, that we don't really understand God, but God is love. He says he's love, and it sounds like a nice sentiment, right? Well, it's not the whole picture, but it's in the right direction of God's character defines all of goodness, holiness, purity, love, things like that. And you find his character in Scripture. That's where we're going to get the definition of marriage, right? So again, this is my reaching out to you, not to tune out and to pay attention to this, because it's at minimum going to give you a different aspect of where marriage came from, what it is at its core, and it's going to give you a 100% sound methodology of understanding how to have a good marriage. I'm going to throw another caveat in there. None of us can actually accomplish that because we're human and we're flawed, right? But the blueprint is there so that you can understand what it was originally designed to be and how it is such a blessing and a privilege for us to even experience the one flesh union that God designed marriage to be. That's my reach out to the people that is not a Christian. For the Christians, this is the meat and potatoes. It is like the core. It's at the center, really, of our existence when it comes to the pursuits that we have. Like, if you could just put yourself on a timeline, you're going to, at one point in your timeline from birth to death, if it looked and you saw a little choppy timeline, a little chart graph going up and down of good times and bad times, if you could just look back on it, your peak pinnacle of your life, of the most joy, happiness, contentment, and what you would look back on is like, that was the time that everything was all about, would be when your marriage is hitting on all cylinders. If you were to get married, if it was hitting on all cylinders, we all fantasize on what it would look like to be married, who that perfect person would be. And the closer you get to that, and whatever you put into your mind that creates that fantasy of what you want your marriage to be, when it gets to that point where it's hitting on all cylinders, that's the pinnacle of your life. That'd be the best part of your whole experience in this existence. And God designed it to be that way. And there's nothing about it, as far as marriage and the things that come along with it, that has anything to do where it is antithetical to the way God designed you as a human. You always think about, we're in sin and all the things that we usually like to do is bad, which is not true, by the way, but it feels that way. Like, oh, I'd really like to, I found $2,000 over here. It's not mine. I want to steal it. We all want to do it. Or, you're going through the dating or the courtship and it's like, oh, I really want to fucking have sex with this person. But you're like, oh, I can't do it, right? All those things that is usually you feel this friction point where it's like, I really want to do it, but it's not right. Why is it that way, God? Lack of information is all I'm going to tell you. But when it comes to marriage, it's as good as it sounds. It's everything that it sounds. It's nothing, there's no friction there, right? Once you get married and once you're in it, provided you follow the blueprint, and even if you don't, you might even have a period of time where it was just the best time in your life. That's the way God designed it to be, right? It's a beautiful thing. There's nothing more beautiful than marriage. It is the peak pinnacle of the blessings that you can experience in life as God created you in his image. Now, here's what he says about marriage, right? Summary. So much about it, but we want to just summarize right now. We just did a summary definition of the cultural context of marriage. Here's a summary definition of what God designed marriage to be. Ephesians 5, verse 31. You guys may already know it. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. The two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying it refers to Christ and the church. That is the center, the core of what marriage actually is. Christ and the church, right? So it's not even about you. It's not about you. It's not about your wife. It's not about if it's not about your husband. It's actually about the idea that God created a one flesh union for us to experience that is going to foreshadow the union of Christ and his bride, which is the universal church. It's a much bigger thing than you could ever actually grasp as you learn more about it, which is why a lot of times, in my opinion, people's marriages fall so short from the ideal because they never even understood what marriage was about from the get-go. They have the types and shadows, they have the subsidiary and like what is left of what marriage is supposed to be, because it's such a variation from what God originally designed it to be. I mean, many years of a fallen, you know, covenant that God gives us to be able to foreshadow Christ in the church, right? If we saw it at its purity, it would just be such a beautiful thing, and we're going to see it in the future when we're with God. But the idea is we just have these crumbs of what it originally was, and so we get in the marriage. Maybe it's really good for a period of time, and before you know it, you're like, "Wow, how did this turn into this? Boy, this is like I've never been more miserable in my entire life," right? Some people can relate to that because it started so good. You still really love your wife or your husband. You still want to make it work. Maybe you have kids, but you're making each other miserable. And that thin line between love and hate somehow becomes a reality in your life. And you're like, I just don't understand how we had such good intentions. And now I almost hate this person. Like they've caused me more pain and damage than anybody could ever do. And I'm trying to make things work because of all these other things we've accumulated, including children possibly. And you're just lost in a sea of like uncertainty and not even knowing where to go to fix things, right? It becomes something like that. And when you get to that point, you're just like, this can't be right. And you start questioning a lot of different things. It could very well happen. When we understand at its core, it's actually not even about the two people that came together in that union. It's actually about a living, breathing representation of the gospel, and that God gave us that to actually be the most impactful form of advancing his kingdom in this millennial age. We're advancing God's kingdom. We're advancing the gospel. You can go share the gospel. You can go tell people what Christ did. You can tell them that it's by grace through faith. You could tell them that it is a free gift that you receive by faith, that God did as something that we could understand and become a part of because it's all for his glory, nothing to do with your behavior, nothing to do with your works. Your behavior and your good works come as a blessing on top of, out of gratitude and sanctification that you get once the Holy Spirit is indwelling. It's a blessing and a privilege that you are able to see God's law, meditate on it, and pursue it with all you have. That's not something you would do for yourself. So those things you could tell somebody, but you could show them the gospel, not just by yourself, but with another person, with that living, breathing union that you have called marriage. That's what marriage is about. That's what the core of it is about. And when that's the foundation of marriage, when you understand that and both people understand that, and then you start layering on top of that foundation all the other fun and exciting things that we get to bring into that marriage, because we live in a day and age where we have such freedom to be able to choose who we're going to be with. We have such resources and privileges to be able to actually go through a courtship, dating, learn, bring our lives together, our careers together, find out where we want to live, maybe buy a house, raise a family. These are just modern medicine allows us to live for a long time. We're going to have kids without worrying that our wife and that the woman is going to die. It's just incredible things that we have. And like everything else we always do when we have things that are so beautiful, we take it for granted, right? Very often we take it for granted. And so we start realizing like, oh my goodness, how did we get to this particular space where, all these things that should be a blessing turn into, wait a minute, they turn into, I thought it was going to be like this. I need this out of my person. I need someone who's going to keep me happy for the rest of my life. I need these particular amount of things for my spouse to give to me. Otherwise, I'm not happy. I don't want to be in this anymore. It turns into this, what have you done for me lately mode? It's incredible how it happens. And so when we look at these things and we find ourselves, I just see people doing so many different things. I see people that are in marriages that have turned off the idea that it could be a good thing. They're just existing. I see people that are in broken marriages that cheat on each other. I see people that divorce. I see some people, I hate to say it, but it's just so few and far between, that have beautiful, God honoring marriages, and it's not for me to judge. I hope I've been divorced twice. So I want to be married, but in a good way. I'm not out here searching and things like that. It's just that I have to take full responsibility for my previous divorces. I didn't know what I was doing. I deserve those divorces because I was the one that had a lack of information. Whether we both did things wrong, yes. But with lack of understanding, how could I expect for it to come out good? So as I understand more, I see other people's marriages and I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are not in a good position. And I'm not trying, I don't get involved. I'm the last person that would ever need to be getting involved in other people's marriages. But as you go on that endeavor to better yourself and to learn more so that you could offer more to somebody else, and you start understanding what marriage actually is, and you see the people that you love and care about that are close to you, and you see their marriages, and maybe you have an up close and personal view. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's your sister, maybe it's your brother, maybe it's your uncle, maybe it's your daughter, maybe it's your, whoever it is who you're really close to their relationships, and you see it and you're like, it's not only a bunch of red flags, it's everything's bad. It's all going to go wrong. Like and you start realizing, now I know how to pray. Now I understand what prayer is all about, because I wouldn't have understood what to pray for had I not sought God out in this department to learn what he designed this to be. And now I see all these other areas where there's holes everywhere, and I just pray for them because only God could fix it, and that he's sovereign either way around, and what to pray for then, versus before, you might look around and just be like, wow, seems like everybody's doing great. I see them on Instagram. They look so happy. And you're a part of the facade when you're that way, because you don't know anything about it. And the sad part is, the reason I want to redefine this is we don't have to take part in that. We don't have to be that team of people that puts on a show for Instagram and for everybody else. And behind the scenes, it's horrible. We don't have to do that anymore. Today is not that type of day where you're subject to that type of oppression. Today's the type of day where you can grab yourself by your own balls, excuse my French, and get your shit together and work hard, because we have so much of an abundance of resources, time, so many different things that we have as privileges right now. And if you're listening from a place that doesn't have those, I'm ashamed that the people that have these resources and time and energy, that we just take it for granted like it's nothing. Because I can only tell you this much, as I've understood more, it's not something you take for granted. That's the one thing, So that's what the rest of this video is going to really be about, is looking at how we redefine it. We're going to keep it simple to start, because we want to look at just clear directives of what it should be, and look a little bit about and see how two of the guys you see on there, three, because Sadia Khan gives you just, I need a female perspective. The last thing I'd prefer to have more of that perspective, but on these videos. But at the same time, I really want to showcase and show people and point them to primarily Orion Tarban. But James Sexton, we've done videos with him before too. He's a divorce attorney, and you can't get a better two guys to give you perspective on the relationship dynamics for Orion Tarban, and then what it looks like when you're in the divorce for James Sexton, because he's a divorce attorney for 30, 40 years or something like that. High profile now, but he's done all kinds of different divorces. So you get great perspective. Sadia, I feel, just gives you an excellent perspective from the woman's point of view, for someone who's trying to kind of give information that isn't going to be offensive or down talk women or men, but kind of just come in and say, this is the reality. She's a psychologist, so she deals with a lot of different things, and gives that perspective of what women can actually do. if they're concerned with making their marriage work or long-term relationship, whatever you guys want to call it these days.
Yeah, I've heard you say that modern dating is like preparing for divorce, essentially.
Essentially, because all the skills and tools that you need for divorce is what we're practicing. So we're learning how to, clap back. We're learning how to get into shape if you break up. We're learning how to get back to practice detachment, and how to recover and how to keep backups in case this goes wrong. So we are entering, and I'm not saying that's necessarily, in honesty. Sometimes I give advice and I say to people, marry the person that you can divorce. And what I mean by that is choose somebody that if worst case scenario happened and if a divorce was to take place, this person is still a reasonable and flexible human being. Don't choose somebody that you love very deeply, but if God forbid you got on their wrong side and you got a divorce, you'd be devastated for the rest of your life. So I'm a contributor to this terrible message, but it's only because unfortunately these are the skills and tools that we're constantly being embedded in our behavior. How to recover from a breakup, how to move on quickly, how to make sure that how to get your, make your ex regret it. It's all this kind of preparing for the worst rather than preparing for the best.
If you're choosing somebody who you wouldn't get absolutely devastated by if you were to get divorced, that means that you're thinking critically about who you're with and kind of getting yourself out of that. If you've ever heard of the limerence that you can get into, which is just like an infatuation almost, but there's a lot more to that. But it's when you're infatuated with somebody and you start having that like love at first sight mode. They figured it out. It's obviously there's a psychological, explanation for it. But I think any of us can think about it and be like, oh, it's not right when you just see somebody and you think it's love at first sight. You're just like, you're allowing your unmet needs, your subconscious unmet needs to take over your functional decision making. And when you do that, you're going to wind up in a place where you make decisions that you haven't thought of anything. It's like, oh, I love this person so much, we're never going to get divorced. That's what Sadia is trying to say, is don't do that, because you could run into that person anywhere, airport, grocery store, church, gym, whatever it is, and you're around them and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't stop thinking about this person. This must be love at first sight. This must be the one, all that stuff. And you start thinking about it and you're like, I got to be with this person. You never really thought about anything. You definitely aren't thinking about what it would be like to break up. It doesn't have to be a full-blown divorce, but like, you're just like, I just got to be with them. I got to be with them. And that will take over. That limerence is like your unmet needs subconsciously. They're so powerful. You don't even fully know why that person's filling the void, but you got to have them, got to be around them, And when that happens, oh man, you're doomed to have a really bad ending to it, right? And I like the perspective she's taking to that, because prepare yourself, think about it. And our goal here in trying to redefine marriage is understand that divorce is a very normal thing. It's a very normal thing. We don't want it to happen. I'm not saying it should happen, but most people go through it. So if you start thinking about it, it's almost like preparing for a car crash. Put your damn seatbelt on. You don't just drive around like, I'm never going to get in a crash. This is going to be great. Never happens. No, and nobody wants a car crash. You don't want the car crash. We're not saying, hey, look, get ready, normalize car crashes. No, but we're saying it is a normal thing. We all go through it. We need to talk about it. You can't just be like, I'm never going to get in a crash. Same thing with divorce. I'm never going to get a divorce. I just don't want to think about it. That's not romantic. That's not very that's negative. No. We got to talk about it and make it a real deal. That way you can understand that by preparing for that, you are doing some introspection and self-reflection to know, I don't want to get divorced. So what would be my part that would contribute to that divorce? And then you, by doing that, by having this analysis, are becoming somebody who's going to be much better to your counterpart. You're going to have a better value proposition. You're going to be better to them in general. You're going to be a more whole individual, because you're not just like running into something thinking that once somebody's with you, they're never going to leave you because you're so special. Come on now, 57% or 56%, whatever it is, divorce rate. It's just ridiculous. And like they say, that just includes the people that get divorced. What about all the other people that stay together and a terrible marriage and cheat on each other and everything else? It's terrible, So we got to redefine this, and we got to actually normalize divorce. It's there for a reason, right? It's a biblical thing as well. If you look in biblical parameters, you're going to find not only is God divorced, he divorced Israel. And again, this is symbolic, but it's important to know. He chose to represent himself as a husband to Israel. And as they continue to go after idols, he time and time again said, I'm going to divorce you. I'm divorcing you. And then his new bride, right? This is all symbolism, by the way. Don't let this trip you out. Is his new wife is the church, right? Old covenant, new covenant. It's purely symbolism, but so is marriage. It's symbolizing Christ and the church. It's not about you. You're not the core of marriage. Marriage didn't exist, and then God was like, oh, that marriage is really cool. Maybe I should like make a little symbol and make like, oh, you'll do Christ the church. I really like the way these people marry each other and stay together forever, and I should make them soulmates. And he created it this way and then gave it to us as a blessing and a privilege. It's always been a symbolic thing. It's always been something that was given to us as a just not just a benefit, but like I can't the right terms is a blessing and a privilege. You know what I mean? It really is, because not even the animals really get the satisfaction of having that commitment that you can get from somebody over time. You might still be able to have the intimacy, which is a huge aspect of it, but at the same time, that really loving admiration and devotion is what we really want. We want that person that won't leave us when they see all the stuff that we really are, our shortcomings, and whether they're small or big, all of us are insecure about our shortcomings. We just feel somebody's going to leave us. We have that fear of abandonment mode. Everybody has a small aspect or a big aspect. Who knows? You want that person that even on your worst day, they're just going to be right there, bring some soup, maybe just kind of like, bring a little blankie or something like that. Come on. We all know we have that same thing going on. So by looking at it properly, you can start doing the work on yourself so that you can realize this isn't as complicated as we've made it. We've made it complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to be a lot more simple, which is you doing some introspection, recognizing that you're not the person that people are just going to be with unconditionally until they die, that you're going to have to work at this for the rest of your life, right? And then looking for the parameters in which gives you the highest probability of being a better person. You have your strengths and your weaknesses and your shortcomings. We're not all superhumans, right? You got to identify those and then play on those strengths. Find somebody that's looking for those things that you have to offer. Maybe you're a very sensitive individual and they need that. Maybe you're somebody who's a high earner and they want that. Don't be ashamed of it. Dive into it, man. You're not going to be anybody different. You ain't going to be nobody different after a couple of months or years or whatever. You're going to wake up and you're going to be doing the same thing that was in the subconscious that you never shared with that person. Got to be your authentic self from the get-go. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about here in a moment is the facade that we go into, right? And we got to drop that facade. Let's just be honest with one another. We got to stop this nonsense. And I know the social media doesn't help it at all. You got to have that nice little platform, of just everybody sees it. And you're just, it's so funny because I'm not even hating on it. It's like, you could look at social media now. I'm going to bring myself up here. And if the Instagram doesn't have like some nice photos and like maybe it's like showcasing a trip you went on or some nice family get-togethers or just showcasing the type of life that somebody else wants to be a part of. You see an Instagram that doesn't have those things. It's just like some old photos, maybe some photos of just like you and a bunch of people, not really edited right, not the right angle, not the right lighting. No time and energy has been put into this Instagram, right? Sadly, that would be me. You could almost look at that and be like, yeah, this person doesn't really apply himself. If he just spent a little bit of time, he could have a nice Instagram. If he doesn't apply himself on Instagram, what else does he not apply himself to? That's the truth. It's the truth. You look at it and you're like, they need to apply themselves, Now, there's obviously some give and takes on that. But at the same time, it's kind of that way. It's like, why wouldn't you spend the time here? You need to do that. That shows that you take care of yourself. We're getting to that place. We're not fully there yet, but I think we're getting to that place. It depends on who you are. Sadly, I'm still in the sexual marketplace. I'm still dating. I'm still trying to find that person. So for me, I got to get that shit together. I'm a little slow on the uptake. So, it's taking me a little bit of time. I start working on other things and I'm like, oh man, I've been paying attention to the Instagram. Turns out it's like the most important thing. I don't think it's all that important if you're married. You're not trying to impress other people, that is. Right now, I'm trying to, put the image out there that I do have something for somebody to come and see that is a positive situation, which is the reality. But I don't give a shit. I'm not out here trying to market myself. But then I start realizing, wait a minute, am I just being lazy? It's almost like going out of the house without taking care of your personal hygiene. It's like you're not trying to be desperate. This is like personal hygiene. You see what I mean? So you're not putting time and effort into your Instagram, making it look really good because you're trying to like be like, oh, come look at me. Not anymore. It's almost like good personal hygiene anymore. It's like, wait a minute, this Instagram looks like shit. I don't think this guy probably brushes his teeth a couple times a day. I think this might be somebody who's not taking care of himself. You see what I'm saying? We're basically to that point right now. I know it took some time for us to all get there, but we're basically there. So we can hate on these people, but you're almost kind of behind the curve if you don't get it together, if you know what I mean. So that's my take on that. Anyways, ramble, but I think it made sense, right? Okay, so now we'll go to the next couple videos.
Desire, but a desire nonetheless.
Look at Orion, if part of the problem.
If no woman is doing laundry, like, it's the easiest way to differentiate
It is.
yourself. And it takes, what, 5 minutes of combined effort to do that? It's like, just if you're doing it strategically, the value that you get out of that hour of time, because that man, I guarantee he's going to brag about that to his friends. All of his friends are going to think, dude, you found a real one, man.
Yeah.
That's
Totally.
don't fuck this up, man.
Yeah, dude.
God, like, it's priceless PR.
Yeah.
If you just want to be cynical and think about it that way, it's like the value that you get out of doing what other people don't, because that's the cost of winning. That's the cost of getting what you want, is being able to do things that the other people either won't or can't.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to close this out now. The two guys on there, I just wanted to put this on here because, you know, this is so simple, right? I say I'm going to be simple, but I'm really not that simple. But this is pretty simple. Can you imagine, women out there, if you're super good looking, you probably don't really give a shit about this. But if you're a person who's like, you know, cares about things outside of just the aesthetics, and you're just like, oh, I'll just get whatever I want because I'm good looking. And back to the Instagram, I have like all these followers and everybody just loves me. That I call it bartender syndrome. 20 years ago, if you're a bartender, every guy liked you. You would be like overwhelmed with attention, right? Nowadays, every girl has bartender syndrome if she's good looking and she has an Instagram, because so many people are flooding her with all these compliments all the time, right? If you're that girl, you're not going to care about what I'm about to say. If you're everybody else who has a heart and a soul, all you really got to do, this is so simple. If you were to do the laundry for a guy, I can't tell you the last time a girl did my laundry. I think it was my first wife when I was like 20, right? And, a little kudos to her for that, because, there was a lot of bad things in that relationship, but I'm pretty sure she did my laundry. Not all the time, but most of the time, I think that was the last time, like 20 years ago. I've not had anybody do my laundry in that long time. I didn't even much think about it until I'm listening to these guys talk, and I'm like, holy shit. That's true. If I had somebody that was doing laundry for me, I think I would be madly in love. She would probably melt my fucking heart just from doing the laundry. I would just be like, wow, this person. I probably would be telling my buddy, like, she did the laundry. My stuff was folded, put away. Crazy. I think I would, at that point, I would have just be like, I need to get serious about this. She cares, man. She must really love me. I mean, I didn't even ask her to do it. I come home, laundry's done. I'm just like, I think I found the one. All of a sudden, I'm talking like I shouldn't. I think God built her just for me, And it's true. It's so true. It's a small, tiny thing you can do, right? And it's obviously a fixated, tip of the spear to many other things. It's kind of being a little bit more selfless in the relationship and all those things that come along with it. But it's just funny. Think about it. What would it take for you to actually do the laundry for your man, right? And I don't know what that would be. I don't claim to understand what is happening with you women inside your head, because every time I've tried to figure it out, it's really tripped my entire life up. So I just mind my own business. I stay in my own lane now, trying to work on just my personal shit, and we'll just figure it out later, I guess, because I can't figure you guys out from hell or high water. It's just something else. But the idea of doing laundry like that is just incredible. That they outline it, right? But it's so true. I thought about it, and I'm like, man, that would be a small thing. And what if I was the type of person that had like this huge thing to offer, like these guys, they represent high value people, like worth tons of money and everything. I'd be thinking the same way. If some girl came to my laundry, I'd be like, let's not even worry about the prenup. Let's just get married. I'm just kidding. But, it's something simple, but it's very true. It'd be like crazy. So simple things like that, and it's definitely not something that should be degrading or derogatory or anything like that. It really shouldn't be. I mean, on our side, I can tell you, there ain't one dude out there, if he saw you doing somebody else's laundry, where he'd be like, look at that fucking whipped ass girl. Boy, he must be doing the right things for her because she'll just do anything. None of it. We'd be like, whoa, do you have a sister? You know, I don't know what the women would be telling you. Who knows, man? But you guys are pretty brutal to each other all the time anyway. So, I mean, I don't know. But anyways, maybe do the laundry. That could be the whole takeaway of this whole video, I guess, I suppose. Now I'm a male chauvinist. But anyways, hope you guys are doing great out there, and I hope it all pans out. All right, like.